Hi folks, Crystal Cox here with Whistleblower Media, and I'm here today to poke a little fun at the First Amendment and show you my new shirt. Well, it's not my new shirt. Actually, this is, this means that I'm definitely an investigative blogger. And these are my real, well, it's my real shirt. Yeah. The First Amendment only applies to attorneys with special rights and investigative reporters such as Kashmir or David Carr of the New York Times. See, that's how it works. Apparently, David Carr of the New York Times and Kashmir have special journalistic privilege to go ahead and say that Crystal Cox is guilty of extortion. That's me, Crystal Cox. And it's not my porn name, it's my real name. Okay? I know a lot of you love to say, hey, is that our porn name? Because, the guy who's suing me is a porn industry attorney. Well, no, it's not my porn name, okay? It's my actual name. So, this is all just too much and too ironic. So, I go to trial for defamation because I'm trying to expose what I believe is corruption in a $40 million bankruptcy, right? And I get sued, and the First Amendment doesn't apply to me because I'm a blogger and not a journalist. Totally ignoring the fact that I'm a citizen of the United States of America and the Constitution should apply to me. Apparently it doesn't. But the judge said that the laws don't apply to me, see, because I am just, okay, well, secretly it's because, I was exposing corruption in the Portland area, and we can't have that. The Portland attorney fraternity does not want that. And so the judge kind of gave David Aman what he wanted, protecting people that were bigger than David Aman. Now, David Aman, he is the attorney for Obsidian Finance Group, the folks that were suing me for defamation. Now, what's interesting about David Aman is that he was named in a legal document called Objection to the Fees. Tonkon Torp was named in that. The information that I got sued over was actually from a court document from years of interviews. Yes, I took notes, even though the judge said I didn't. Yes, I have editing capabilities. And there isn't one person in the world that cannot argue that I have an independent product, right? You make fun of me because I capitalize in odd places, right? And I don't use proper grammar. And I curse here and there, and I don't have an independent product. Well, apparently I don't. So anyway, David Aman was involved, the Tonkon Torp law firm was involved in the original bankruptcy, and they were named in this objection to the fees. I listened to court hearings, I listened to depositions, I listened to videos of Kevin Patrick himself talking. I felt like I really knew the case inside and out, and yeah, I added my own special yammer and curse and rant to it, because yeah, I did have an opinion. And it was a biased opinion. Yeah, so I guess I'm not a journalist to big media because I was biased. Yeah, 1 and 1 is 2. I'm a bias because I believe that because, that's what I learned to be the truth, and so that's, So I read massive documents over years. How could I not form an opinion? If being a journalist in big media is just calling both sides to hear what their story is, really? No, that's not the news that I want to hear. I posted documents, evidence, internal emails from the Department of Justice, emails from the trustees that were involved that were supposed to be watching over Kevin Patrick. Kevin Patrick was appointed by a federal judge. Your tax dollars went into this. Obsidian Finance Group got millions. Tens of millions for each project that they applied for. They sued the state of Oregon. They got free tax credits. Then they got loans on these tax credits to get more free money so that they could start these solar farms. Then they sold the solar farms and wattage agreements with Portland General Electric and Pacific Corp and probably more. And this is not a public interest, really. These tax credits were given to them free, I believe, from the way I understand it. Then they used them as an asset to get a loan, and then he got all mad. Because the bank VP said, hey, wait a minute, what's this blogger saying about you? They're like, oh, she's just lying. So, of course they sued me because the bank wouldn't give them a loan. Well, odd. They sued me years after they deposed Stephanie DeYoung, who was inside the Summit bankruptcy, who actually had the blog that I was getting the information from. They deposed her and asked about me. They knew my intention for years, but yet they sued me for defamation? seems like they kind of sued the wrong person, doesn't it? You know why? Well, because they weren't allowed to sue Stephanie DeYoung. Some agreement that had been made, so they decided they'd sue me. They thought that I'd back down. They thought that I would just delete all the information. They offered me, I think now it's about 9 settlement agreements, if you include where they actually just tried to steal my right to appeal. They put it on auction. You can email me, savvybroker@yahoo.com or crystal@crystalcox.com if you need more information on that. But David Aman actually desperate to make the appeal stop. We're halfway through the appeal, and he gets a Portland, Oregon sheriff to auction off my right to appeal. So we had to go to a hearing to stop that. Eugene Volokh put an end to that because he's the true constitutional rights hero in this big saga here. And anyway, that'd be like number 9. So they offered me ways out of this case over and over and over. One of the times was if I ever mentioned their name, I had to give them $5,000 for every time. And they wanted a bunch of domain names and things. But basically, and I didn't mind giving them the names and stop and talking, about them. It's like, whatever, But what they also wanted me to do was to say that basically I made the stuff up and that Stephanie DeYoung and her father, Mark Newman, told me to say it. That's against the law. That's a violation of their rights, their constitutional rights, their legal rights, and it wasn't true. So I rejected these offers. And 8 times, and then of course the 9th one was what I just explained to you. So they offered me ways out of this over and over and over, and I said no. It would have made the judgment go away. It would have made my life a heck of a lot easier. But what I wanted was a ruling for all of you, for all citizens journalists, all people standing up for corruption. I wanted, and I still want, basically to end the monopoly that big media has on free speech. So I'm fighting for the rights of all bloggers. Meanwhile, a lot of the bloggers in big media are trashing me and lying about me and defaming me. And this originated with 2 attorneys, one of them that's suing me now in Nevada, and David Aman. They both told a federal judge that I had extorted them. So instead of filing a criminal investigation against me so that I had due process in a court of law, what they did was they basically just told the judge that I did it, and so the judge made comments to that effect in legal documents. David Aman sent one email. He emailed me in December of 2010, and he asked me to, let me see if this, make sure this is a recording. He sent me a cease and desist in December of 2010, and he asked me to, basically told me that he was going to sue me if I did not stop writing about Kevin Patrick. Well, I had hundreds of, posts, if not thousands of blog posts, and he didn't tell me which one. He just told me just to stop writing about him. So I decided that I wasn't going to listen to this, so I did a post on December 25th and discussed more about why what I was saying was true. That's the one that ended up eventually going on trial, because the first cease and desist was December 22nd, so it was days before. So weeks later, January 14th, they filed a $10 million lawsuit against me. So I had a legal threat and a lawsuit filed, and on the 19th of January 2011, I sent an email to David Aman trying to negotiate a ceasefire. I didn't want to spend the next few years of my life. I thought the summit people had already been indicted. I thought it was over. I didn't want to spend the next few years of my life in a legal battle, and I just didn't want my life to be that. So I said, all right, well, here's what I can do. So I sent him a settlement agreement. Now, he emailed me back and said, oh, what would this entail? And I emailed him back, and I said, I'm in no way saying I would remove anything for money or whatever. I explained it all. It was 5 emails. So we ended up going to trial, and as you all know now, I ended up losing because the judge said I was a blogger and I didn't have First Amendment rights. I couldn't protect any emails, any source information. They didn't have to prove actual malice. I had 800 pages I brought a proof of where that blog post came from, and all of that was thrown out as hearsay. So basically, I had no defenses. The First Amendment doesn't apply to me because I'm some special case. So I lost the case. Okay. Then the following month or so, David Aman, even though he'd won a $2.5 million judgment against me, he already won. So out of malicious retaliation with actual malice and knowing it was false, He sent the email to the New York Times, Forbes, I think Seattle Weekly, and I think a few other places. He sent one email, and he accused me of trying to extort him and his client. So instead of filing criminal charges so I could have due process in a court of law, he simply said I had extorted him. Okay, so now David Carr, Kashmir Hill, they decide that they're the judge and jury, and so I'm guilty of extortion because this attorney says I'm guilty and this one email says I am. Now, David Carr interviewed me. Kashmir Hill did not interview me. So, which I'm not saying either of that is good or bad. That's just information for you folks. So basically, Kashmir Hill of Forbes and David Carr of the New York Times get to go ahead and say, Crystal Cox is an extortionist. She's guilty of extortion. She did this, she did that. Basically say I'm a criminal. And also they discuss a blog I had about a 3-year-old. Never, ever happened. Never had a blog. They never had to prove I had a blog. They never showed the blog. They never proved it. They just stated it and made me look like some sort of a monster. First of all, it's not illegal to have a blog about a 3-year-old. It's certainly, there's lots of court cases where these things happen, but I never had the blog, okay? So if I'm guilty of something, say it and make fun of me, okay? Or say, in my opinion, she, or we heard that she, or upon my knowledge and belief, or we allege this. But no, Kashmir Hill just flat out said it. And the fraud files, I think it's Tracy Conan or something, she basically says it. Crystal Cox is an extortionist. Okay. Well, I'm not an extortionist. I was never on trial for extortion. I never had due process in any way. I never had criminal investigation that I'm aware of for extortion. But David Carr of the New York Times, Kashmir Hill, and Tracy Conan, and quite a few other co-conspirators out there, I call them, they said that I am guilty of extortion. And now Kashmir Hill and David Carr, they're supposed to be traditional media. People believe Forbes, the New York Times. I like to call them sheeple, because they believe these things, and why would you really? I mean, there was no factual evidence. So they are protected under, I guess, shield laws and laws that protect journalists. They're protected to flat out defame me, lie about me, say I'm guilty of a crime that I never was on trial for. If I was accused of extortion and there was a criminal investigation and I was found guilty of extortion, then these outlets could call me an extortionist. For David Carr of the New York Times and Kashmir Hill of Forbes to insinuate, to flat out state that I am guilty of extortion when I have not been prosecuted of extortion is defamation, right? But I get a $2.5 million judgment because I'm questioning whether or not a federal bankruptcy trustee is corrupt or not. Okay, but they get to just say that and ruin my life. And this just went further because the New York Times is so credible among people, judges. Now in the case I'm in Nevada where a First Amendment attorney is suing me to take away my First Amendment rights, this judge actually called information from the Philly Law Blog and the New York Times and the Forbes article of Kashmir Hill legal commentary. So now they've used it to further defame me, further take my rights, further fine me hundreds of thousands of dollars for domain names and all this craziness because the New York Times says that I'm guilty. Forbes says I'm guilty. Philly Law Blog says I'm guilty. The fraud files say I'm guilty, so I must be, right? This First Amendment attorney in Nevada has also used this information to WIPO. Peter L. Michelson of WIPO, he issued a statement. He gave some domain names to this First Amendment attorney that belonged to me, and some of them that used to belong to me that belonged to Elliot Bernstein. Now, Peter L. Michelson is a WIPO panelist. He's not neutral. They would never give me the statement where he said he was neutral. He has massive conflicts of interest in the iViewIt case. iViewIt is the biggest technology theft in the world. Check out iViewIt.tv, deniedpatent.com. Google anything to do with it. It's worth $13 trillion. There's massive undisclosed liabilities. There's RICO complaints. There's USPTO complaints. There's FBI investigations. Check it out. Well, the WIPO panelist, not only did he give the domain names that belonged to Elliot Bernstein and Crystal Cox back to this man, what he did is a publication that went international, and he flat out stated, he didn't say opinion, he didn't say speculated, alleged, nothing. Flat out stated that Crystal Cox and Elliot Bernstein are extortionists, guilty of extortion. Okay? Now, he used the Forbes article and the New York Times article as part of his alleged investigation. Now, I sent him actual proof of what was really going on, and he didn't care. I sent him all the emails to prove that I didn't extort anyone. He didn't care. So, Peter Michelson has joined in this to defame me, and he apparently gets to have free reign too. So, they can legally defame me, and they're protected apparently by the laws to do so. Even though they've ruined my life, they've ruined my business, they've ruined my interpersonal relationships, they've caused me massive hate. I get harassed online all the time, I get intimidated, I get threatened constantly because of the lies they told about me, and they have absolutely no accountability. Now, what I'm fighting for is equality among bloggers and journalists. And I do not believe that Kashmir Hill of Forbes or David Carr of the New York Times or a WIPO panelist should have some sort of extraordinary right to just single me out and defame me and ruin me because they don't like me or because they don't want any blogger to have the same equal rights as they do because they're traditional journalists. I want to end the monopoly that big media has on free speech. And that's what the Obsidian Finance Group versus Crystal Cox case will do. This case draws attention to the fact that big media does not have any more rights than any individual. And that's what we're trying to do, is fight for all bloggers' rights and equality. Well, in an equal system, Kashmir Hill and David Carr are accountable for what they've done. David Aman is accountable for defaming me. He had actual malice. He knew the facts. He was the one in the emails with me. There was 5 of them. Part of one email was used. It was a reply to a cease and desist. He pulled that part out. So how come they can legally defame me, but then I don't have the same equal protection under the law that they do, and I didn't do that. I never flat out accused someone of a crime. When you look at my post, you see that all the different facts that I showed, that the reason that I believe, and I still fully believe, that Kevin Patrick acted unethically, and I personally believe he acted unlawful. I believe that he broke bankruptcy codes, and if you read all the documents, I'm not the only one. The issues that I raised were already raised by people inside of the bankruptcy, and not just Stephanie DeYoung, who was one of my sources. So look into the facts of the case, or believe your favorite blogger, but the actual proof is in the facts and the documents. And I just wanted to just do this little video kind of to make fun at the fact that Kashmir Hill of Forbes and David Carr, the New York Times, get to defame me. The man who sued me for defamation, David Aman, he gets to thrash me, ruin me, and defame me after he gets a $2.5 million judgment against me, and they get to ruin my life under the protection of the laws that don't protect me. It's just, just something I wanted to bring your attention to. I hope you all have a great day. Take care.